So if you could take your seat, please, and we are ready to start the afternoon session. Thank you. I would like to welcome you all to the third session, the afternoon session of this conference. Third session is about satellite communications. I think it is a topic that is back on the top of the agenda. I think that for the last 2-3 years we've been discussing about cybersecurity and the digital transformation. So we've been missing these kind of discussions. But I think that it's obvious that the increased demand for data and of course due to COVID and other reasons, and of course the new players that are coming into the market have brought this topic back to the top of the agenda. So I'm looking forward for very interesting presentations and of course the panel discussion that will be followed. And I'm very pleased to be here with you this afternoon. So moving on to the first presentation, I would like to give the floor to Mr. David Tropp Hag, Vice President EMEA Sales at KVH Industries. He will deliver a presentation entitled "How Will New Satellite Constellations Impact Onboard Connectivity?" Thank you.
Thanks, Tommy. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back from lunch. Happy to see that so many find their way back on a Friday. So that's encouraging. I suppose you're interested in satellite communications for that reason. I'll take you on a little bit of a walkthrough of how KVH sees the next generation satellite communication systems that are launching these days and about to be launched in the next couple of years, and how this will impact shipping and maritime. I will try to follow this path, look at why are we actually demanding more connectivity, what is driving this demand in the market, then a short overview of the next generation services coming along. I know the next two presenters afterwards will also get into that, so I'm going to leave a little bit for them and not cover everything. Then I'll look a little bit at what are the potential benefits of these new systems, so why do they matter to shipping, and then are these benefits actually what you need? Is it a match for shipping? So I hope you're with me on that trip. Let's start by the increasing demands for connectivity. We've seen a growth, even a surge in the use of data on board vessels for many years actually, but during COVID it took quite a rapid increase for many reasons. There was a recent report from Inmarsat suggesting some high percentage growth in every sector, so it's not confined to one sector. You can see the exact numbers here and you can read the full report from Inmarsat. But we see this increase continuing even after COVID, so it's not something that's going to go away again, and it's coming from all areas of vessel operations. The business of the vessel itself, from the crew's welfare needs, and of course smart shipping applications. That has very much been the topic of this morning's discussion. All the digitalization needs to connect to the outside world, because otherwise it'll just be data on board the vessel. So let's start by looking at the business of the crew of the ship. We see that commercial vessels increasingly need communication. I mean, they've always needed it, but it's growing because regulatory requirements are increasing. They need to report on many things. And it's a mix of different types of applications, both high bandwidth applications, such as video conferencing. It could be live video surveillance. It could be remote inspections on the vessel. It's becoming more and more common that vessels want to have a a weekly video conference with the shore side. And of course, this puts a lot of requirements on communication and bandwidth. On the low bandwidth side, this is not really where the growth is, but these applications are kind of the base layer of all the vessel's operation, all the emails, all the telephone lines, and the stuff that just make things work in daily life on board. So the next segment is traditionally what is using the most data on board, the crew welfare requirements. And of course, this has grown immensely. We've seen this from all owners wanting to do more for the crew while they were contained on board or couldn't get to shore. So there was a need for crew to get more in contact with home and get updates of what was going on in the world. Latest MLC has been revised to actually make it mandatory now. There's still some vague language that you can charge for it if you don't charge too much. So it's still a little bit woolly, but now it's actually a demand to make it available. So that's new. And crew is using data in pretty much the same way as we all do with our mobile phones. A lot of high bandwidth applications, social media, video streaming, and other sorts of entertainment. And of course, they have their private lives to tend to, banking, telephones, stuff like that. And then, of course, we have the last category, which is probably the one growing the fastest, maybe not accounting for most data today, but very surely will do in the future, at least a lot more than today. Data coming from sensors on board. Hopefully, there will be a layer of intelligence on board the vessel that can downsize the samples, so they don't need to transfer everything to shore. But sensors are definitely providing a lot of data on a daily basis and ongoing. Remote monitoring of different sorts for plant maintenance and other types of predictive maintenance. And finally, remote surveys. We saw a lot of that during COVID, that when it wasn't possible to send someone to the ship, you could do a remote DP survey or class survey. We tested different things with different actors and found very good results, and they were all very happy that they could save travel. They could be much more flexible in planning these surveys. And it was a win-win for everybody. Maybe they pay a few $100s for the traffic instead of a few $1,000s for the trip, plus a lot of time spent on it. So all of these factors contribute to an increasing demand all the way around. And this demand today is being met already by a hybrid of different connectivity solutions. We see VSAT as being the predominant, at least over the last couple of years. It's taken over from fleet broadband as being the big workhorse in maritime. Could be KU band, could be KA band, but at least some sort of VSAT technology. To complement that, we see more and more owners using LTE, 4G, 5G cellular services. So when they are near shore, they will offload data on a higher speed connection. And finally, there is typically a backup solution in the L-band range. Could be a fleet broadband, could be an Iridium Certus, or another type of backup. So there is actually already a hybrid scenario on board many vessels, and there has been for many years. So some of the reasons why people are choosing a hybrid solution, of course, is the number one, reliability. They want a robust service on board the vessels. We need to make sure that there's always connectivity. Sort of the lack of connectivity has big impacts on board when they cannot report their whereabouts, when they cannot file papers for port, when they cannot get out of port because they haven't filed paperwork. There's a lot of complications if connectivity goes away. Hybrid connectivity also needs to be seamless. It cannot be something that they have to mess around with on board, that, oh, now I'm in this area, now I connect this connection, and it just needs to work without thinking about what connectivity am I currently using. It needs to be fast as possible, at least, so that, at least for crew internet, you get a reasonable experience, especially if you're paying your ship owner for it. And convenient, you could say, is a little bit along the same lines as seamless. It needs to be easy to manage for the ship, for the shore side as well, because the IT departments in the shipping companies are usually not the biggest, so they get a lot of work thrown on them to manage IT on the vessels, which is quite a lot. So it needs to be easy and convenient and intelligent. Some good intelligence to switch between the different links. So it's not just, hey, this one is available now, I'll choose that. But maybe it's a bad connection even if it's available. So it has to be an intelligent way of switching. The business I'm in is primarily satellite communication, so I'll focus on that part, and that is also the element of the hybrid solutions that is carrying the most data today. But that area is rapidly changing. We see new, we have been operating on geostationary satellites for many, many years. With the first generation of Inmarsat satellites, then all the KU band providers came into the VSAT field, and still lots of new capacities being launched in the geostationary orbit. So there's a lot of new investment in capacity, also in the traditional geostationary orbits. And then there is the non-geostationary orbits, which is satellites in lower layers closer to Earth that are spinning around the Earth constantly. There's a lot of buzz about these in the media. You hear about Starlink, OneWeb, Kuiper, Rivada, and some of the others. And I'm going to go into a little bit of more detail on some of these providers. This is a very fast-moving area. Just last couple of weeks, I snapped a few press clippings. Marlink, during SMM, announced their first live test on OneWeb for a vessel, on a board a vessel. Eutelsat just the other day announced that they had launched a new 500 gigabits per second satellite, part of their Connect network. Speedcast announced that they had signed the first Starlink reseller agreement. And one I saw last night when I was just doing the final research is that Kuiper, Amazon's project, has signed up for 92 satellite launches. Actually, 92 rocket launches. So I don't know how many satellites are on each, but a lot. So I think their constellation is going to be about 3,500 satellites. So you can do the math there. But let's focus on the ones that are closest to now in the short time frame, next year or two. We know OneWeb is very, very active, and they are already providing service in the Arctic regions and providing tests, at least in the rest of the world. They have a constellation of 648 satellites in the KU band. Most of them are launched, and there are 5 more launches planned in this year and early next year. The total capacity of that network, at least in the first generation, is 1.1 terabit per second. So that's an awesome amount of bandwidth. I don't even know what the next generation is. If they can tweak the same satellites to provide even more bandwidth, most likely they can. So what are they going to offer to the market? They're going to offer very high speed service, 200 megabits per second. At least that's the capability of the system. We're expecting they'll be offering packages somewhat lower than 200, maybe 10 to 100 megabits per second, because providing very, very high speed coupled with volume-based plans, which we believe that they will be offering, means that you will eat the data incredibly quickly. So it doesn't make sense to offer 200 megabits per second for a metered service. And what we see and what we hear in the press is that they are offering, or they're going through a traditional reseller model. They are announcing partnerships with the usual satellite service providers that you all deal with. So that's probably the first one that you will see go live. Next one is probably the one that's generating the most buzz. At least I know every single customer meeting I go to, I get I get asked, what's this Starlink? What's coming? What are you going to do about it? And of course, Elon Musk is a master in marketing. Himself is a great brand. But Starlink is bringing also some pretty revolutionary technology to the market. It's a huge constellation of 12,000 satellites at least. I think they have filed FCC for 40,000 satellites, if I'm not mistaken. 2,500 has been launched, if I'm not mistaken. And this is actually wrong, I found yesterday. They have, since November, been launching the second generation satellites that can talk to each other. And that's important for maritime because when they cannot talk to each other, they can only cover as long as they can see an Earth station. So in the middle of the ocean, they cannot see an Earth station, so they can't give you any service. But when they can start talking between the satellites and then bring the satellite signal down to the Earth station, then they can provide service in the middle of the ocean. Their previous optimistic guess was that mid-2022 this would be available. It's not yet. I have the revised coverage map on the next slide, so that's the current best guess. But again, the service they are planning on providing is 100 megabits per second service. At least that's what we hear. Yeah, so I'm just wondering if this was the latest presentation version. So at the moment there's no published CIR and there's no contention ratio, so nobody really knows what the service level is. But when you study the user groups, when you listen to the various YouTube bloggers and things like that, you can probably expect somewhere around 50 to 100 megabits per second. We hear from some of our satellite antenna colleagues that when they put the Starlink system on a motion table, it will actually go down quite a lot in speed. But that might change if they choose to introduce stabilized antennas in the future. But right now, it's a flat panel antenna that's mounted on the railing. The business model they're going out with currently seems to be a business to consumer model, although they have recently announced partnerships. We are a little bit confused because they are announcing reseller partnerships and integrator partnerships, and it's not 100% clear what this actually entails. But my guess is that Starlink will be your provider and the integrators will make it work in your combined setup. So that's the future of Starlink. This is the latest coverage map I could scrape from the internet. So you see the light blue area, that's where the satellites can today see an Earth station and therefore provide service. And then you have the middle blue, which is the first area that will be covered when the inter-satellite links are ready. And then the dark blue, and of course, if you can't see up here, that's Q4 2022. This is now, in principle. So I don't know if that's still a realistic date. And then finally, pole-to-pole coverage will be available somewhere in 2023. So as I said, I have a couple of presenters coming after me that will also go into details about all the other networks coming up. So I'll just put this on the screen to give you an idea of how many there are up there. These are all different projects, launching lots of satellites, providing a lot of new capacity. KVH is working with Intelsat, which is the bottom one here. They're going to quadruple the bandwidth they have available within the next 4 years. So there's an immense amount of bandwidth coming online, and I think the only thing that's certain is that prices for shipping will be lower. Or maybe not lower, you'll get a lot more for the same money. That's probably a more realistic scenario. So why is there such a big buzz about NGSOs and their potential benefits? Well, the biggest benefit that they bring to the market is low latency. Because of the proximity to Earth, the satellite signal has to travel very shortly, and therefore it goes much faster. So latency is the big advantage that only low Earth orbit satellites have. And for commercial maritime, that could be a benefit when you're moving applications to the cloud. which we see lots of customers do. They want to operate Dynamics, they want to operate Office 365, they want to have connected databases, they want to synchronize stuff. And in those situations, it does actually matter with latency. It may not be something that's critical, but for the user experience, when they type something, if it doesn't appear on the screen immediately, it's annoying. We all know that. So, of course, then there are the obvious areas where latency is an issue. When you do video conferencing, even though you can easily do it on geo, the experience will be better with a lower latency. You will have an instant crisp picture instead of this slowly forming picture. So that's the biggest benefit of low Earth orbit. The next one is higher bandwidth and more bandwidth. That's not necessarily an advantage of NGSO constellations only, because as I mentioned, Eutelsat is launching a lot of capacity. Viasat, Inmarsat's probably no new owner, is launching, I think, 4 terabits of capacity in the Viasat 3 constellation. And Intelsat is putting up a whole program of new satellites. So everybody's putting up that capacity, and speeds will go up and prices will come down, no matter what band you're looking at. And the final thing that NGSO may have going for it is lower cost terminals, at least at the moment. It looks like both OneWeb and Starlink is, well, OneWeb is around $20,000 for a package, and Starlink is even less than that, maybe $10,000 for the 2 flat panel antennas. We'll see what comes out next, what kind of antennas they will bring. So with those potential benefits in mind, I think it's interesting to ask, is this a match for maritime? Is this something you can use? Well, I like this quote because it sort of, I don't know what the English saying is, puts a little bit ice in the blood. It says, our services will be faster, less expensive than current KU markets offerings, and will be delivered to, 50 megabits per second delivered to an iPad-sized terminal. And the reason I think that this actually is a little bit funny to look at now is because that's what Inmarsat said when they were launching Fleet Express in 2014, well, before they had launched it. And reality now is that it's not 50 megabits per second, it's not an iPad-sized terminal. It's cheaper than today, for sure. And, it's cheaper than it was per megabit than it was. And the terminals are actually smaller than the old traditional 2 meter or 1.5 meter VSAT domes. So part of it is true, but the proof is in the actual offering. So we need to see the services active. I mean, as an owner, as a user of satellite capacity, I would like to see what is it actually OneWeb, Starlink, and other players are bringing to the customers. What are the rate plans looking like? What are the terms? What are the quality of service? What are the service level agreements? But with that said, I don't think there's any doubt that some applications would benefit from this new technology. And as I mentioned, the price for megabits per second will be pushed down to the benefit of the users. So most likely scenario to me is that NGSO or LEO satellite constellations would be a supplementary service, at least in the way that it's being presented today, bringing us to a possible future configuration where you still have the previously mentioned connectivity links on board. You have your KU band or K-band VSAT taking care of your base business, but then you have an alternative primary which the integrators will make work so that when it's available, it will take the mother load, you could say, the main part of the data transfer. But when it's not available or when the service level is too low, the standard VSAT will cover. Secondarily, you could still have cell because maybe that's better in some areas, others it's not. But it's a cheap and economical alternative sometimes. And finally, you will have L-band as backup for security reasons, for compliance reasons. So I think that's a very realistic scenario. If we're seeing today $5,000 as the starting point for Starlink, who's to say that they're not going to slash that by a tenth and say, well, maybe it's a $500 package you add to your standard VSAT package, and the service is only 10 megabits per second or 20 megabits per second. That's still light years better than what you have today. So I think that's the most realistic view, for me at least. Then I'll take a quick look at what KVH does. What is our hybrid answer? We recently launched a new antenna that integrates VSAT and cellular service in one antenna, and it does below-deck switching in an intelligent way, taking into account link quality, packet loss, jitter, and of course availability, so that it's not just a service that says, oh, now this one is on its first priority, I'll use that. It will actually use the best equipped link for the case. In the future, this will also be able to support LEO's constellations. So if the customer, or if we choose to resell Starlink or OneWeb solution, it will be integratable with the same algorithms and logic behind it to switch intelligently between the services. And finally, this is more like an advertising for KVH. We offer our agile plans, connectivity as a service solution. Basically, we offer everything in a single package with no upfront costs at a monthly rental fee. You pay for your hardware, your service, your installation, your warranty, your spare parts, your travel, everything is included in a single monthly fee. And I would think in a place like Cyprus with so many ship managers with fairly short planning horizons, this would be an attractive offer because you are not in a long-term commitment. When you're finished using it, you send it back and the subscription stops. So there's never any big investment or any 3 or 5 year commitment. So with that, I'm done with my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.
So many thanks for the update on the current state of play and the future developments on the market. We have a question related to the pricing, and I'm reading the question now. It's with all these satellites that will be made available for the shipping industry, do you think that the price for a proper connectivity that we have at our homes will ever be matched with the shore connectivity price? And I think it meant to be sea connectivity price, if I get it right. So it's
if I understand the connection, if I understand the question, is would the gap between what we have at home and at sea be closed?
This is how I see it as well.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's. Yeah, I don't think that's likely. The way I see it is actually widening the gap. What I have at home now is 1,000 megabits per second for $50, and we're now talking about maybe getting to 50 or 100 megabits per second for $5,000. It's not getting closer. It's a quantum leap for shipping. So I think it will always be the reality that shipping is a fairly small community compared to the global population. There's only 50, 60,000 vessels. They're traveling in areas where only they go, and there's not a big business case for actually servicing them unless you charge pretty heftily. And that's why we service them. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Do you have any other
questions?
Seems. Yeah, Michalis, please.
Hi, can I add something on the cost? Of course, I don't expect the cost to go down, right? It's getting, there is a pressure from owners to reduce costs, but the old days we used to have just basic connectivity. Now the solution providers like yourselves offering is much beyond the connectivity, right? It's IT as well, and much beyond that. So the overall cost, I don't expect personal to go down. I mean, it cannot reduce offering 1 megabit to 100 megabit, right? satellite is expensive. If you see these constellations at the range of 10 billion each. So the investors, they need to return their money somehow.
I think you're absolutely right, Michalis, and maybe I have phrased it wrongly. What I mean is the price per megabit per second will go down. So maybe the budget will remain 1,500 to 2,000, but instead of getting 2 megabits, you'll get 20 megabits. So that's probably a more realistic scenario. Maybe you pay a little bit more than today, but get 10 times the bandwidth. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.